All right, guys, welcome back. And just a real big quick shout out to everyone so far to start the year. Channel's back underway after a bit of a hiatus, and we really appreciate all the support we're getting here at League of Inches. And a massive shout out to our first guest of our first new series of the year, one of a couple that we'll have out there. And it's more sort of to focus on the fans, I guess, and fan pages out there. Me personally, obviously, having a page myself, but I try and be around a lot of the clubs. I love the coming down into it and talking to the people that run these pages for all their teams and how passionate they are and the stories that they all have for their teams. And same with fans as well. So this series is all about getting the fans' point of view for just their club alone. So we won't be delving into any of the issues currently in the NRL and all those sorts of things or the games. It'll just be that focused on that team. So Troy, really appreciate you coming on. You've got everyone by now probably knows who you are. You've got the Parra Cave in the background for those watching on the video. The Parra Cave Podcast, Troy looks after and runs. If you haven't already yet, I tell you, even if you're not a Parra fan, you need to check these out. I love them. I love listening to them. It makes my week every time I get to listen in. Troy, you do a marvelous job. I know you're a passionate Parra man. For those quickly, I know you've got a bit there in the background for your screen, but if you're not watching, you can find the Parra Cave podcast on YouTube, Facebook, everywhere your podcasts are, which basically everywhere these days. Do you want to quickly give a shout out to where you can find your podcast?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you very much, Joel, for having me on your show. I know you've been a guest on the Parra Cave podcast previously, so very happy to return the favour. So, yeah, thank you very much for having me. You're doing a great job yourself covering the great game that we both love, rugby league. In terms of myself, the Parra Cave podcast, it can be found on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts or any other podcast platform, YouTube as well, putting a few videos up there from time to time of little clips and breaking each episode up into like two parts so people can watch them as well. And I've actually just recently delved into the world of TikTok as well. So I've got the podcast on TikTok as well. So Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter. So it's all over the place. So we'll see how that goes.
My apologies. I'm not on TikTok, sorry. So I wasn't sure of that platform there. But look out, you can see Troy doing his dancing now on the platform, which would be fantastic to watch. Look, wanted to obviously this one's about the fans and about your team, which clearly you can tell it's the Parramatta Eels and a bit of bias. It's my team as well. But how long have you supported Parra and why did you choose Parra?
Okay, so goes back to 1986. So what's that? 37 years now. So as you and I and many other Para fans get reminded, that's how long it's been since we've last won a competition. So thank you everyone for the reminder. So it's pretty etched in my head anyway, because that's when I started following Parramatta. Because my first vivid memory of watching the Eels was the 1986 Grand Final. On the lounge in the PJs. Used to get up, well, that year anyway, and years afterwards. As a kid, used to get up in the morning. I think President's Cup or under 23s, as it was back then, was about 10 o'clock kickoff, I think, and then your reserve grade was about midday, and then I think the main game was at 3 o'clock. So in the PJs, just sat on the couch and watched it all day. The reason why I supported Parramatta is so mum and dad weren't really sports fans. I mean, they liked a little bit of sport, but they weren't really into sport as much as what I am in today or any other sort of parents out there as well. But the way it goes is when mum and dad were together, my dad used to have a mate come over, as you do he used to come over once a week, sometimes twice a week, just to visit, hang out. And he was from Guildford, so right in the heart of Parramatta territory. And he was obviously a Parramatta supporter. So he used to talk to Dad about it a little bit here and there about the good times would be like, yeah, go Para and all this, and then the not so good times would be like, bloody Parramatta, and
Yeah.
the frustrations that I'm sure you and I have had many over the years. So I guess as a 8-year-old kid, it sort of probably just stuck in the head. I guess he was talking Parramatta Eels all the time, and um, I've lived in Penrith pretty much all my life, so that's a bit of a funny thing as to why I go for Parramatta. But yeah, so he went for Parramatta. He talked about Parramatta and stuck in the head and pick and stick, and yeah, here I am today.
The rest is history, and look at you go now. So a massive Para fan, obviously, and when you first started, you obviously had the likes of Sterlo, Price. The list goes on. Kenny. Any player in particular stood out to you in that time when you first started going for the Eels?
Yeah, so I always say this in those early days, it was probably Sterlo that I probably found to be my favourite player. Um, my first Eels jersey from '86 had a 7 on the back, um, and one a few years later had a 6 on it, but more a Sterlo fan. Um, and then he retired in '92 due to injury, and then it was probably there probably wasn't a real favourite player from then. It was probably a couple here and there. And then it probably moved on to Hindy when he started.
Yeah. I think that's a lot of Para fans. I think it's more of a respect thing with Hindmarsh as well, in a way, is that sort of what he went through at the club at that time as well. And I know early on he had a little bit of success, but he was there for some really lean years, and he just continued to be the front and center of the club for some time. And I think so many people, Para fans, and probably just NRL fans in general, respect the guy. And he's always that one everyone thinks of straight away when you think about the players who haven't won that premiership, and you just wish there was a way just to get him one. He's a club legend for mine, and I think he's really, really up there when it's when you talk about the greatest of all time, the Eels. So
Yeah, definitely. And I think, even though the players that came before him like in Sterlo's era, I've grown to watch replays and watch all their highlights and I've grown, I suppose, grown up rewatching their careers.
yeah,
Um, and they've obviously come into the favorite players realm as well. But back in the day, it was Sterlo, and I've had the privilege of interviewing Sterlo and Hindy and Ray Price and Steve Ella and Mick Cronin. Sorry, I haven't done Mick Cronin yet. I have to go down to Gerringong. Steve Ella, Brett Kenny, so Eric Grove. So yeah, all these guys I've had the privilege of interviewing, and some we've got a pretty good connection now.
yeah. In terms of back then and watching the games as a fan growing up, was there a game that sort of you remember watching, thinking, I actually love this club. This is why I really want to follow this club. And obviously, people who are listening go, it's easy. He's just started following '86. It's the grand final win. But was there a game even before that, or maybe afterwards, where the passion really became evolved for you, and you were like, "Nah, this is my club."
Look, there's not really one that stands out to be honest. There is as going for Parramatta after '86 is some pretty lean times. There's probably always the little wins against Penrith is
Yeah,
probably good that were few and far between. Probably that early '90s period against the Broncos where we sort of had the wood on the Broncos.
yeah,
Um, when we ruined the opening of their stadium up there when they were building Suncorp, they moved to ANZ Stadium up in Brisbane. And I think it was 12-4, I think it was. So that game stands out as well.
yeah.
Um, and then the next year, I think we had a draw against them, or we may have even beat them again. So we had a little bit of a good time against them, considering they were up the top and had all internationals in their team, and we were struggling at that time. There's also the win against Great Britain as well. In '92, the touring side. Well, one game that also I remember standing out for me was Brett Kenny's last game at Parramatta Stadium. That was a great memory. I think it was a Friday night game. Um, I think the club organised all the cardboard Brett Kenny masks and
Yeah.
yeah, no, that one stands out in those early days. So yeah, probably in the early days, probably those games stand out.
Yeah, perfect. I think that Brett Kenny game was enough to make grown men cry, I believe. So it's saying goodbye to that absolute legend. I want to sort of now navigate a little bit into the Parra Cave podcast and ask a couple of questions about this. What made you go from a fan who I'm guessing was at a lot of the games knowing you and sitting there either on the hill or in the crowd at Parra Stadium back then? And what made you go, you know what, I think it's a good idea to start this Parra Cave podcast?
I was actually so the whole idea of it sort of came about. I was on another podcast uh, before this and sort of got a little bit of a taste of it. And then I left that podcast and I thought, well, I enjoy what I was doing there. And look, I think I could probably give it a crack, give it a go. And podcasting seemed to be the thing that everybody was doing at the time. And we've both seen how it's grown over the last 5-10 years. Um, Anybody who wants to do it can do it, and I thought that at the time. So um, had some help from a few people in terms of what to get, what equipment to get, what programs to use, all that sort of jazz, which I'm very thankful for and very grateful for. Um, 'Cause they had podcasts themselves, so they knew what they were doing, and I just thought, I have a relatively good um, memory and mind and um, thoughts about the game of rugby league, and I just wanted to interview people.
Yeah.
So I thought, yeah, I'll give it a crack, give it a go, and at the time that I started, a lot of people probably uh, sort of. I probably made it a little bit easier. I knew a few people that I could get onto the show,
Yeah.
which was good. Um, and then it's just as sort of my profile has sort of lifted a little bit. People know who I am, and that sort of
Famous
come
now.
on, yeah, no, I wouldn't go that far, but yeah, they come on and they see who I've had on the show before, and um, the high caliber guests come on, and the other part also, I'm sort of I've the last couple of years I've done like yourself doing now with myself the fan interviews. Um, I was basically doing those as Parramatta based fans that I knew, and because I just love to hear the rugby league stories. But these days, I'm slowly going to be opening it up to like yourself, so
Yeah.
maybe a little bit of competition. I don't know, but
Oh, look, yeah.
yeah, friendly rivalry. But yeah, open it up to all clubs and you know listen to their stories about supporting their team. Um, in the game of rugby league, because not only will it bring back great memories for them, it'll also bring back great memories for me as well, no doubt.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and always like a bit of friendly competition. It's always good. There's a lot of people out there listening to podcasts driving around. You can never have enough to listen to. I know I listen to probably 3 or 4 a day, so
Yeah,
the more
wow.
they can get through, the better. So, in terms of how long have you actually had the Parra Cave podcast for those who don't know?
Yeah, so probably 3 years now. So 2020 was my first episode.
Yeah,
So um, up to 124 this week. So um, yeah, so May 2020
yeah,
started it then. So it's been around for about 3 years, and um, 124 episodes, looking to put more episodes on a week, and yeah, it's going well. I'm really enjoying it.
I think it's going really, really well, and I think as a listener, and not even talking as someone who knows you, it's good to see how far it's actually grown from being so small to basically being a fan. It's good to hear that story from being a fan on the hill and supporting a club to now being where you're at, and it's going to be even further down the track. I think it provides a lot of inspiration and motivation for fans out there to say, you know what, you can be a bit like it's hard work, and I bet if I've
Oh,
asked you the question, I'll bet you get guests where you're sort of crapping your pants a bit, thinking, "Oh, I don't know if I can do this one." Has there been anyone that you've interviewed so far where you've had the butterflies?
oh, look, to be honest, I get the butterflies with everyone. To be
Yeah,
honest, yeah, because you don't want to embarrass yourself, and yeah, it can be nerve wracking sometimes the profile of the person, and you think, oh, okay, yeah, that probably that initial like phone call and when you start that
yeah,
podcast chat, that's probably the hardest part. But going through it, it's probably a little bit easier. Depends on the person as well. So someone like yourself, we've got a great rapport with, and it's like we're mates talking, so that makes it a lot easier.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, as some of the stories that you hear make you really enjoy them, and you finish the call and you think, yeah, I really enjoyed that chat. And then
yeah,
I guess the more you do, like anything in life, repetition, it gets a lot easier. And even for me, 3 years later, I used to take a break during December, January. So then when you start back up and you think, oh, that first one's going to be a bit awkward to do because
yeah,
you haven't done it for 2 months.
yeah.
But once you get back into it, it's a lot easier.
Yeah, it gets it's just that flow on effect after that. So 124 episodes or so. I'm going to let you have three where you can choose three that people who are watching or listening to this for the first time, haven't checked out the Parra Podcast, can go there, search up for these episodes. What are the three you're choosing?
Ah, jeez, that's like picking your only child, isn't it? Or picking
Yeah,
your
it's a
child.
difficult one.
It is a difficult one. Look, I'm gonna have to say, obviously Heidi. He was the 50th episode, so I was fortunate enough to do that at his cafe at Glenwood. So
Yep.
sit down face to face and do that one. So I really enjoyed that one. He bought me a spot of lunch afterwards, so that was great on your hindy. If you're in Sydney, go to Glenwood and the tuck shop and get yourself a feed.
I was going to say Fletch wouldn't like that because he reckons he keeps his wallet in his pocket. So
Yeah, well, I haven't had Fletch on the podcast yet, so I'm trying to get him on. But so maybe Heidi's got one over him for coming on the podcast rather than Fletch. So
I think a lot of
um,
fans have to start getting into him. If you see Fletch out in the street or talk to him or send him a message and let him know Parra Cave Podcast need him. So
yeah,
let's all
yeah,
bombard him.
that's right, that's right. So Heidi's definitely one. Um, oh, look, put me on the spot. I'm trying to think now. You know, probably my highest rating one is probably Brett Kenny.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I mean, there's even I spoke to Paul Carriage. I mean, I really enjoyed talking to him as well.
yeah,
A lot of fans bag him, obviously for that '98 prelim final against the Dogs, but just to hear his words and his honesty about yes, I stuffed up. I didn't have the greatest game that day, and it cost me my career. His honesty was great. Yeah, just trying to think, to be honest. So yeah, probably Brett Kenny, Hindy. Um, I'll try and pick a non-Parramatta player because obviously they're always going to be the favourites, I guess. Scotty Sattler, he was pretty good.
yeah, yeah,
Um, he's a really good bloke. That was really enjoyable. Robbie Beckett as well, the old Boom Boom Beckett from the
yeah,
Panthers.
yeah, yeah. A recent one I listened to as well, and this one for if people don't want to scroll too far, it's the Anthony Maroon one. I actually found that really interesting, and he's obviously a lot of people will know him on the radio Triple M and big media personnel when it comes to especially radio. And I found that one a really great listen, a lot of fun, a lot of great stories as well as his sort of inside knowledge into the game and really took a lot out of that interview. I thought that was a really good one and a recent one as well for those who are just wanting to sort of quickly get onto something.
Yeah, that was only last week. So yeah, and that's an example of sort of having that great rapport and feeling comfortable
Yeah,
talking to him, and um, yeah, and he's a high profile South Sydney supporter, and he's also covers the game of rugby league with Triple M. So um, yeah, that was a pretty fun one to do as well.
yeah. Now I'll take you away from the podcast. Now I know that you're too famous. You want to try and get back to a bit of the fan on this video and podcast. Is I want to take you back to last year, and I know as a Parra fan, it was a year where it just felt like it kept going up and up, and the mountaintop was there, and we sort of you've reached it, but you sort of didn't reach it in a way. The grand final that lost to the Panthers, and you're living in Penrith, so it would have been even harder and tougher to take, and you would have had it shoved in your face for a lot longer than a lot of Parra fans who could have just probably closed themselves in a room and cried for days. So how were your emotions? I know the year was a success, but in a way it kind of wasn't as well because I think for the Para club, they've got to that stage now where they can be in that mold of a top four club and they are wanting that success, especially after the squad that they had built coming into last year.
Yeah, definitely. Look, last year, as you said, probably was a success. It just didn't show success on the history boards, the premiership boards. To have both the men's and the women's teams in grand finals, that's a massive effort. I mean, I know that not every NRL club has a women's side, but still to have it's the first time that's happened in the competition since the NRLW has been happening. So to have both of those sides in the grand final, that was a massive success. Memberships were number one as well, I think, in the NRL. So there was a success that way. The year sort of went. Again, it was like a roller coaster year. It was the ups and downs, and you have the loss against the Tigers and the loss against the Bulldogs and teams that you're supposed to win, and then you just scrape into the top four with the win against Melbourne on the in the last round. So you
Which you
get in
would have
the
loved. You would have loved it in the Storm.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, especially to get that top four spot. Once that game had finished, once that game had finished and we are in the top four, then you just thought, anything could happen.
Mm.
Um, you you get two bites of the cherry. Not that you'd want two bites of the cherry. Even though we were playing Penrith in the first round, I was confident that we were going to get them. Considering that we had got them twice in the year uh, previous to the finals. A lot of people say, yeah, but the second game Nathan was sent off, and
Mm.
but that's football. We did break their home winning record at Bluebet, so that was all right. So I thought, yeah, we can get the Panthers. Unfortunately, we didn't, but then um, got the Raiders at home in a final, and then a game against the Cowboys at prelim final. I was unfortunate, or well, not unfortunate, but I watched it at Parramatta Eels Club. I wasn't able to get up to Townsville, too expensive. Um,
Everything
I,
jacked up.
oh, absolutely. I do know people who did get up there, so they were quite lucky and they enjoyed it. But yeah, it would have been great to be up there. But even still, to be at Parramatta Eels Club, on that night, and then it was probably one of the most emotional nights I've had in a long time. The club just went off, and outside the streets just went off, and it was massive. And then yeah, the grand final. Look, 2001, I bawled my eyes out when we lost. 2009, I was disappointed. Um, because we weren't expected to be there from eighth spot. So, um, and then I was even more disappointed the year after when we found out what happened. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's another story. But for this grand final, Penrith were just too good. That I thought the first 20 minutes we were probably, sort of matching it with them. 15, 20 minutes, and then they just had all the grand final experience and big game experience, and sort of ran away with it there. It was what 22-0, I think, at one stage, and they'd already won the game. And then yeah, so I was disappointed again. Um, I suppose the older you get, the different you get when you lose a grand final. But yeah, this one was disappointing. Pretty much got back straight on the train from Homebush back to Parramatta, and yeah, there was hardly anyone at the Leagues Club, so it was quite like a ghost town. The, people slowly started coming back to Parramatta Leagues Club, so you could tell when the trains were coming back
Yeah.
from Homebush. Um, and then I actually stayed in Parramatta that night, and then I was going to catch a train home to Penrith, but then the darling wife said, "Oh, no, nah, it's all right. I'll come and get you. You can't come back," because I had no other clothes except for Parramatta clothes. So
Yeah.
um, she goes, "Nah, it's all right. I'll come and pick you up." So she came
Yeah.
to and pick me up. So that was all
If
right.
you walking around Penrith in those clothes the day after, I don't think it would have been pleasant for you.